Okay, so we're going to do ideomotor signaling. Now, ideomotor means for hypnotherapy, it's getting a response or a form of communication with the client when you're working with them. It's a subconscious or superconscious response. So meaning they're in a deeper trance and we ask for a head nod, or when we do rocking, that's an ideomotor response. So we're asking the body to rock forward for a yes and a no. And that's when we're doing finger signals. We're going to set up a yes and a no finger, take people deeper into trance and ask them questions and get the response through the fingers. This is something that we do use in a deeper trance. We do want them to be in a good space. So we're going to do the Elman to get them into this space. So Dave Elman himself actually used what they call hypno sleep. Like I said, there is a nice little training you can do on hypno sleep. It's about $100 and something that teaches Dave Elman's style, but it's basically what we're doing. So instead of someone having to talk, which there are some people that can channel and talk in deep trance, but you find that if someone's just answering questions, it can be more, conscious interference if they're having to actually communicate. So I will show you finger signals, but I am going to show you also how to do it in a different couple of ways as well. And you can kind of choose. Well, actually, we might practice 2 ways actually today, just for fun, instead of 1 way, because there's this cool way where you have a whiteboard and a yes and a no that lights up, and the person's got to say whatever lights up, and that's the subconscious communication. So we'll have a play with that as well. So it is really just to get more of a subconscious response. And when you do ask questions, it's like that you are talking to the subconscious when they answer questions that they normally wouldn't say. Like if you ask someone if they had secondary gain, which was keeping the pain there, or maybe they've come from a bad relationship, and if you said, well, what are you getting out of it? I'll tell you what, when I do that, because I do that sometimes, if people aren't making change, I'm like, come on, you must be getting something out of this. So people don't generally say, yes, I actually love the fight, so when you ask subconscious or the decision maker or superconscious, if say, are they getting any secondary gain or anything out of this? And it says yes, you're talking into subconscious, because they wouldn't tell you straight up. So and it's quite cool too, because even if someone wasn't in deep trance, you might be able to tackle those annoying beliefs that aren't rational or real, but you've got to address them we've talked about this already a few times this week, you've got to address them so that they believe the change is happening. Those are things you can also ask when you're using ideomotor, whether it's standing up, finger signals, or getting a yes no light to flash. So it says here, you're never going to know whether things truly are, where signals are coming from. But to me, it's, if I'm going to talk basically to someone that's not very open-minded, I always say to them, when we do this kind of work, this is the part of you, the automatic part of you that's driving the car. It's working your body when you're not concentrating. And I mean, 80 to 90% of your day, you're not concentrating on what you're doing, but you're doing it. So we're communicating with that part of your mind instead of your conscious mind. The conscious mind makes up, like we did yesterday with meaning, where we got two objects and decided who the parent was. That's what our conscious mind is constantly doing. It's giving meaning to things that it doesn't understand. And that meaning is usually not accurate. It's just because we have to have meaning in our lives. We have to have some form of understanding, or there'd be chaos. So the conscious mind is always doing that, deciding it's where it is, or they're doing what you're doing because of this reason, and generally it's not right. But the subconscious is the one that's actually just keeping on, chugging on, doing everything how it's supposed to be doing, and it knows why. If you're not comfortable using superconscious, so to me, conscious, subconscious, superconscious, unconscious all rolls together, those words. the superconscious being, the subconscious being the part of us that just follows instructions. If you tell a subconscious to do something like go out and get a drink in trance and then go back into trance, it will take it logically. It will go into the kitchen, have a drink, and then go into trance right there. And then it won't think I better come back and sit down, because the subconscious just follows instructions. Now, there's got to be a part that stops that from happening. Do you know what I mean? There's got to be a part that kicks in saying I should really be back. It'd be safer for me to be back on the chair and then to go into trance. That's what I call a decision maker or superconscious. And so for some people, when I'm working with them, I just say, look, I'm going to talk to the decision maker. This is the part that remembers at 5 something happened to you and decides that you still should be scared of dogs. Do you know what I mean? This is the part that analyzes everything that goes on in your life and decides, right now it's time to put weight on to keep you safe because we're done. Do you know what I mean? It's not the subconscious, it's not the conscious totally, and it's not the unconscious. It's just our automatic responses. So there is a part of us that's always analyzing, and it could be put within the realms of parts. But for me, it's like the decision maker is a really nice term to use for people that you think superconscious might make them go, oh, are we doing something weird? To me, superconscious is not a higher self. This is only how I see it, just because I have to kind of convince superconscious to do things that are better for the client. And to me, higher self, you don't have to convince. Do you know what I mean? So I still feel like it's a very human part of us. And that human part of us is where the human's at. So some people, when I work with superconscious, it is like working with higher self. And then some people that aren't open-minded, have not been in this kind of working, and it's maybe for smoking, superconscious will be very grounded and earthly like. So I think it's just based on the person. But superconscious definitely, I feel, is the way to get into the higher realms. You know, we go through that kind of brain wave. If it was just a brain wave, it's just a different frequency that's a bit higher. So yeah, some people feel, and especially when I'm working with kids, I just talk about the decision maker in your mind. And so this is who we want to kind of hook up with when we're doing ideomotor responses, just normal stuff for health and anxiety and stuff.
Is superconscious different to ego? Like, are they two different things?
I think everything's all a part of each other, but I would say it's different.
Yeah, I would hope it was different.
Yeah, totally. Now, see, even the word ego has so many different meanings. Like when you use the word ego in psychology, it's very different to the ego that all the spiritual people talk about. So ego in itself is a concept that is so different, has a different meaning for everybody that says that word. And people even deem it as a bad thing. We need to get rid of the ego, when in actual fact, the ego has really good qualities. It's who we are, it's our personality, it's our drive and things. So it's interesting that, yeah, the term ego in itself, you kind of have to think about what you think ego is and see if it lines up with what you feel superconscious is. Do you know what I mean? Because it's all different. And I'm even just giving you so what I've seen from working with people, this is my kind of conclusion for now. It might change next week if I have a client come in that says otherwise, you know. So it's yeah, so when we're just talking with people, I just say decision maker, or superconscious, it just makes it quite interesting. I'll tell you what, Alicia, just to answer that question, I'll give you an idea of what somebody does. So one of the SP practitioners that teach using superconscious, when she does something which is pulling down the veil on the client's conscious mind, which means gets the conscious mind totally dissociated and puts the conscious mind somewhere else on a holiday or something. But then she brings in the ego and the inner child and puts them out of the way as well in that place, so that they're all hanging out together, and then works with superconscious or divine mind, which I find interesting. So that might answer your question from what somebody I know does. Yeah. So she kind of puts those out of the way and gives them healing, and then works with this part. But I mean, it's all just names of naming something that we kind of all seem to have a similar experience, so we give it a name. But for the client, it's like you can use, subconscious, superconscious. If you're talking to the heart and you want the heart to slow down its beating because a person's got high blood pressure, for me personally, I'll talk to the unconscious mind as well, because the unconscious is our eyes, heart beating, our eyes blinking, all the things that happen as a baby when we're born. So I would be like talking to the unconscious and the subconscious. If you're talking to superconscious, it tends to be that you're talking with all of those parts, like the overlord, the overlord of our mind. I have called it. I had this guy that was really into Star Trek and Star Wars and stuff, so I was calling it the Overlord. We were coming up with names for what it is, and some people refer to, for ideomotor responses, we're going to connect with your inner healing or your inner wisdom or your inner goddess. If someone's into that kind of stuff, you can really term it whatever you want, and you can brand it whatever you want. You can brand having a hypnosis style that connects with your inner goddess or your inner masculine and inner feminine, because you just have to ask questions. You just ask the inner masculine to come out and ask it questions for healing. So, it's just a way of communication, and you can totally make it what you want. Nor you could do ideomotor responses and bring out their inner grandparent, their inner grandmother, the crone part of them. I don't like the word crone, it's horrible. But the inner wisdom, you could ask that part of them come through and work. You can do anything. End of the day, it's probably all working with the same part of the mind. It's just giving different names. But you can see how you can brand it and kind of make it something special that you work with specifically. And so it says here, I need to really change this because this is not my copy. This was in the manual before. I took over 18Z, and I do view it a little bit different. So it says here, the faster the signal response, the less thought there is. So a more, like this book is saying that the quicker response, the more likely it is to be subconscious or superconscious. I haven't found that, so I do need to change this. What I find is when you are working with superconscious or subconscious at a deeper level, the answer is always done in the same speed. So if someone's slow, the answer is always slow. If someone's quick to answer, it's generally they're quick to answer. If someone's consciously thinking, it tends to be like, oh yes, and the way they pick up their thumb or finger will be kind of different. It doesn't matter if people are consciously interfering a little bit, because the conscious mind and our thought process is very powerful in change. So even if they are influencing a little bit, you're still going to get really good change. So we don't need to worry about that. Another thing that can happen is you've got your two hands set up for yes and no's, and you'll be answering yes or no's on one hand, and the other one will start flickering and they won't know. And that'll be the subconscious response. So you kind of ignore the other one, and keep talking. And that's when the trust starts happening with the client. So it says here that you, like I said, I've got to change this. It says here that you usually ask the client for the yes, no finger, but we do it in a way where we set up the yes finger ourselves, and then we ask them for the no finger. So, and I'm going to show you how to do that in the Elman induction. And then from there, I love this. And this is Rossi. This is Ernest Rossi. I've got all his books. He's, they're probably nearly, they'll be getting to a point, because it's Ericssonian stuff. They're probably getting to a point where they might be public domain too. But he says the inner part of your mind knows what you have forgotten or never even consciously knew. So you can let your fingers do the talking for you today. So I thought that was beautiful way of talking to the mind. And so in our little script here is, and so this is in your diploma under ideomotor signaling. So for this little script here, it's like the inner part of your mind knows what you have forgotten or didn't even know. You can let your fingers do the talking. We already have a yes set up. So which finger do you want to use for a no? Once they say that, you practice yes, 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 no, no, no. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. You can watch this on YouTube, other people doing it. Once you've got that, then you can start asking questions. Is this weight gain being used as a protection due to unresolved trauma? Yes or no? Can we please clear this today? So you will hear this kind of questioning in SP, in the SWAN, in parts therapy with Freddie Jacquin when they teach parts. It's just the yes and no questions. So anytime you look up any kind of therapy where they talk to one part, the questions are yes or no. Sometimes you mess up and say a question that can't have a yes or no answer, and then you realize, so you just backtrack and ask the question again. But this is really how we get into it. So once when you've done an interview with the client and you get really what they want or what they believe is happening. So you say you've talked to a client for 30 or 40 minutes about their issue, you're going to have all the questions you need to ask and answer. So super conscious based on what's in your interview. If you're doing weight loss and someone decided they want to be 78 kilos, you could ask, is 78 kilos the right weight? Yes or no? No. Do we need to go up? Yes. Okay, I'm going to go up in kilos. Lift the finger up when I say, 79, 80, 81. Okay, 81. Right, lock in 81. Do you know what I mean? So you can ask, like if someone was coming for, say a woman was coming in for bladder control, you can ask superconscious or subconscious or decision maker, is there unresolved trauma that's causing this issue? Yes or no? Well, do you realize that she is safe now? No. Okay, well, I want you to notice what the environment's like and realize that she is safe. When you know that she's safe, give me a yes. Okay, now can we clear that trauma? So like I said, if you want to really get good at that questioning, watch me doing a demo on SP or watch the SWAN or watch parts therapy with ideomotor responses. Even just go on YouTube and look up ideomotor responses. There'll be so much on there, and it just gives you a real idea of the language. Now, another thing that you do for ideomotor, if you're not going to do a yes and a no, when they've got their eyes closed, you can imagine that in front of them is a whiteboard, and on one side of the whiteboard is a yes. You get them to draw a yes and a no, and then you ask the subconscious mind to light up the right one. If they're visual, to light up the right one, and they have to say it immediately without thinking yes, no, with what they see. They teach that one in the hypno-oncology course, which is for cancer. So the guy uses that method in hospitals to help people. I think that's really cool. The pendulum is cool. So you put someone into trance and you have the pendulum and you ask the pendulum while they're holding it. The theory is that there's very tiny little muscles and responses coming through the fingers which move the pendulum. And they can have their eyes open staring at the pendulum, or and we are still, just remembering that we are still using the client's subconscious, superconscious mind, unless we are very good at what we do and directing with a higher source. I always would question, and the answers would probably be based on the prior experience of the client. So I wouldn't be going and asking too much stuff that could be life-changing. I use this more for healing. Is there trauma? Are there emotions that need to be cleared? Is there stuff with mum? Is there any cords that need to be cut? Is there past relationship issues that are unresolved? Do you know what I mean? So I use this not for fortune telling type stuff. I use this specifically for clearing trauma. I do this myself. I put myself into trance when I'm working with others, and I get the energy of the other person to take over my hand, and then I do therapy, and then I do surrogacy work through my hand for somebody else. So if you trust yourself and you can get really in tune with that kind of stuff, it's a bit more airy-fairy. You can use even ideomotor responses in doing remote therapy or remote healing if you believe in that. I believe we're all interconnected. So, the possibility is endless. This is something that you'll choose to do on the client. It's not something you probably do with every client, but if you know you've got a client that goes into trance, well, they kind of switch off, you know, then the finger signals is a really good thing to do. If you have a tricky-ish client, you know, do the stand-up asking questions, which is different. All you need to do is just get a yes and a no, and then ask the questions. If you know that a client is very visual, like they're very visual, I would go the yes and the no, and you probably don't even need to put them into trance, because you know once they're visualizing, once there's something in front of them, they're in trance. So you probably wouldn't even need to do an induction. You know what I mean? As long as they're fired up, that's hypnosis. So pretty cool, hey? Pretty cool. What we're going to do now.
I was just going to ask Justine, because I use a pendulum for a lot of things, but what comes up isn't always like one time someone was missing. They didn't turn up to the place we were, and we weren't sure whether they had an accident or anything. And I used my pendulum, so would it be a good idea to contact the police?
Yeah.
But I also asked afterwards, are they okay? Are they safe? Have they been in an accident? And they said they're okay. Yes, they've been in an accident. No, but it's a good idea to contact the police. And I was thinking, oh, that's really weird. And actually it turned out that one of the people contacted the police, and that kept her occupied for 15 minutes. So she wasn't stressing, and then they turned up. But it wasn't like the police did anything. You know, it was just.
But it helped the person itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
It helped the situation. Yeah. So that was kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I tend to really just use it for healing type stuff. But it is interesting. And sometimes, like even in that situation, you know, when you're stressing and it's, you know, you think about being really stressed out, your nervous system is wired, you get out the pendulum, you look at the pendulum, you're instantly putting yourself into parasympathetic, and then you're starting to answer questions. So it's got to be good for you anyway.
Yeah, well,
It's going to take you out of stress.
We were miles from anywhere with no internet, and we were just like, what can we do? And I thought, well, I'm just going to ask my pendulum.
Yeah, good on you. Yeah, and it gives you something to, yeah. So you can definitely see that in two ways, because, you know, it occupied, and at least you feel like you were doing something by ringing the police.
Yeah, and it really helped that person. And then it turned out we had internet, which we didn't know, which was really interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.